The lights were blinding. The applause was thunderous. And for a split second, you could feel it. Something was about to go very, very wrong. It was supposed to be another playful late-night interview. Another charming exchange between Hollywood's fastest-rising star and America's sharpest satirical host. But what happened that night left the studio frozen in a silence so thick, you could almost hear hearts pounding. Before we dive in, if you love explosive celebrity moments and dramatic behind-the-scenes storytelling, make sure you subscribe to Studio Narrator right now. Hit that like button and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Because this story, it only gets wilder. The stage of the late show gleamed beneath the polished lights. The iconic desk, the velvet curtains, the live band settling into a soft groove. And behind the desk, smiling with practiced confidence, sat Stephen Colbert, master of wit, king of political punchlines, a man who rarely loses control of his stage. But tonight wasn't about him. The announcer's voice boomed across the studio. Please welcome the incredibly talented Jenna Ortega. The audience erupted. Jenna walked out dressed in sleek black, minimalist, elegant, composed. Her expression carried that familiar, mysterious calm fans adored. The same aura that made her performance in Wednesday iconic. She waved softly, gave a restrained smile, and sat across from Colbert. From the first handshake, something felt off. Colbert leaned in, grin wide. Jenna, welcome back. You've become the internet's favorite Gothic queen. How does it feel to terrify and inspire millions at the same time? Polite laughter from the crowd. Jenna's lips curved slightly. I don't think I terrify anyone, she replied calmly. I just play characters that aren't afraid to be honest. There it was. A subtle emphasis. Honest. Colbert chuckled. Honest is good. Though sometimes honesty can get people into trouble, especially in Hollywood. The audience oohed lightly. Jenna tilted her head. Only if people don't like what they hear. The band stopped playing. It was a microsecond, but it was noticeable. Colbert shifted in his chair. Well, speaking of things people don't like hearing, he continued, tone playful but probing, you've been very vocal lately about creative control. Rewriting lines. Challenging scripts. That's bold for someone so young. The word young lingered in the air like a quiet insult. Jenna's posture straightened. I care about the integrity of the work, she said evenly. If something doesn't feel authentic to the character, I speak up. Colbert raised an eyebrow. Even if it annoys writers? Light laughter rippled through the audience again, but it wasn't as confident now. Jenna didn't laugh. I think collaboration is important, she replied. But so is respect. The word respect landed harder than expected. Colbert tapped his pen against the desk. He smiled, but it was tighter now. Of course, of course. Though some might say actors sticking to the script is also respectful. There it was. The challenge. A few audience members shifted in their seats. Jenna's gaze didn't waver. And some might say scripts improve when actors are allowed to bring truth into them. The tension was no longer subtle. Colbert leaned back, folding his hands. So you're saying you know better than the writers? A collective inhale swept across the room. Jenna blinked slowly. Calm. Controlled. But her eyes sharpened. I'm saying, she began carefully, that storytelling works best when everyone listens to each other. Her voice never rose. That made it more powerful. Colbert laughed, but it sounded slightly forced. You sound like you're running for office. The audience laughed louder this time, relieved at the humor. But Jenna didn't smile. Or maybe, she said softly, I just don't like being underestimated. Silence. A heavy, unexpected silence. The band members glanced at each other. Colbert adjusted his tie. For the first time in years of broadcasting, he looked caught off guard. Underestimated, he repeated. I don't think anyone underestimates you. Jenna's hands rested calmly in her lap. It happens more than you think. Especially when you're young. Especially when you're a woman. The crowd murmured, a different kind of sound now. Not laughter. Recognition. Colbert shifted gears. Well, we certainly don't want to underestimate you here, he said, smiling again, trying to steer back into safer territory. You're one of the most exciting talents of your generation. Thank you, Jenna replied. But her tone carried something unspoken. The energy had changed. The playful late-night rhythm was gone. In its place was something sharper. Realer. Colbert tried again. Let's talk about the darker roles you gravitate toward. You seem drawn to intense characters. Is that intentional? Jenna paused, considering. I'm drawn to complexity, she said. To To characters who don't apologize for existing. The audience applauded softly. Colbert nodded. And do you apologize for existing? A strange question. Jenna's eyes narrowed just slightly. No. The answer was immediate. And I don't think anyone should have to. The applause grew louder this time. Colbert smiled, but there was tension behind it. The interview wasn't unfolding according to the usual late-night formula. The rhythm was unpredictable. The power dynamic unclear. He tried a lighter approach. You know, when I was your age. Jenna gently interrupted. I'm not your age. Gasps. It wasn't rude. It wasn't loud. But it cut cleanly through the air. Colbert blinked. That's true, he admitted, chuckling awkwardly. The audience laughed, but now they were watching closely. Every word mattered. Jenna leaned slightly forward, her voice still calm. And I think that's important. Different generations have different boundaries. Different expectations. We're not afraid to speak up. The implication hung between them. Colbert drummed his fingers on the desk. So you're saying my generation didn't speak up? I'm saying, Jenna replied carefully, that we're learning from the silence we grew up watching. Another wave of murmurs. The band didn't dare play. Colbert's smile faded just a fraction. For years, he had steered conversations with effortless control. But now the current felt reversed. The audience wasn't laughing on cue anymore. They were listening. Really listening. Jenna's expression softened slightly, but her voice stayed firm. I respect what you've built, she added. But respect goes both ways. And there it was. The line that shifted everything. The cameras zoomed in subtly, capturing Colbert's reaction. The slight tightening of his jaw, the measured inhale. Of course it does, he said finally. But the energy in the room had changed permanently. What began as a promotional stop had become something else entirely. A generational confrontation unfolding live on air. And this was only the beginning. Because what happened next would push the tension even further and leave the audience stunned in a way late-night television rarely allows. The applause that followed should have eased the tension. It didn't. Instead, it felt polite, controlled, like the audience wasn't sure whether they were witnessing a brilliant, thought-provoking exchange or the slow unraveling of a late-night balance that had existed for decades. Stephen Colbert leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes studying Jenna Ortega with a new calculation. The playful host persona hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted. There was steel under the smile now. Well, he said, clearing his throat lightly, I love a good generational reckoning before the commercial break. A ripple of laughter scattered across the audience. Nervous. Unsure. Jenna didn't laugh this time. She simply tilted her head slightly, her expression composed but alert. I'm not here for a reckoning, she said evenly. I'm here to talk about my work. A subtle correction. Colbert nodded. Of course. Let's talk about the work. He shuffled his cue cards, though everyone could see he didn't need them. You've mentioned in past interviews that you've pushed back against certain lines or scenes. Some directors have called that challenging. The word landed deliberately. Jenna's hands folded in her lap. Challenging how? Colbert shrugged. Well, when an actor rewrites dialogue, questions tone, requests changes, some might say that disrupts the process. The band members sat frozen. No musical punctuations. No safety net. Jenna's gaze didn't waver. Or it improves it. A few audience members clapped instinctively. Colbert smiled tightly. So you're saying the directors were wrong? I'm saying, she replied carefully, that I don't sign onto projects to be silent. A murmur rippled through the room again, stronger this time. Colbert leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Silence is a strong word. It is, Jenna agreed. And it's one I'm familiar with. That line hung in the air longer than any joke could have. Colbert blinked. Are you implying you've been silenced? Jenna's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained calm. I'm implying that young actors, especially young women, are often expected to be grateful before they're allowed to have opinions. The audience reacted immediately, a mix of applause and sharp intakes of breath. Colbert raised both hands lightly, half playful, half defensive. Now hold on. I'm not your producer. No, Jenna replied, her eyes steady. But you are part of the industry conversation. That hit. You could almost see it register. For years, Colbert had been the commentator, the satirist dissecting culture from behind a polished desk. But now he wasn't dissecting. He was being included in the critique. He adjusted his posture. And what exactly is that conversation, in your view? Jenna inhaled slowly. The studio felt smaller somehow. It's about control, she said. Who gets it? Who keeps it? And who's told they're lucky just to be in the room? The crowd was completely silent now. Colbert tried to pivot. But you are lucky, he said, almost reflexively. You've had incredible success. Massive projects. A global fan base. And I worked for it, she replied instantly. There was no anger in her voice. Just certainty. I didn't wake up on a red carpet, she continued. I've been auditioning since I was a child. Long hours. Rejections. Learning scripts in hotel rooms. Missing normal milestones. So when I speak up now, it's not entitlement. It's experience. A loud wave of applause erupted. Not polite this time. Genuine. Colbert nodded slowly. Fair point. But the air between them was charged. He glanced toward the audience, then back at her. Do you think there's a danger in young actors believing they always know best? Jenna's eyes sharpened slightly. Do you think there's a danger in older executives believing they always do? Gasps. The tension snapped like a pulled wire. Colbert's lips pressed together for half a second before he smiled again. Touché. But it wasn't playful anymore. It was strategic. The cameras zoomed in tighter. Social media managers backstage were already typing furiously. Colbert crossed his legs. Let me ask you something directly, he said, voice lowering. Have you ever been told you're difficult? Jenna didn't hesitate. Yes. And how does that feel? Predictable. The audience murmured loudly at that. Colbert blinked. Predictable? It's a word used when someone doesn't stay small, she replied. The applause this time was thunderous. Even some crew members near the stage couldn't hide their reactions. Colbert gave a half smile. You're very articulate. Another loaded phrase. Jenna caught it instantly. I've been speaking my whole life, she said calmly. People just decide when they want to hear it. That line sent a visible ripple through the audience. Phones subtly lifted in the darkened seats. Colbert exhaled through his nose, then chuckled. I feel like I'm being interviewed now. Jenna's lips curved slightly. That depends. Are you uncomfortable? A collective "oh" filled the room. Colbert laughed, genuinely this time, though there was tension beneath it. I've interviewed presidents, he said. I think I can handle this. Jenna leaned back, her voice still soft. Good. The word wasn't aggressive. It was measured. The studio lights seemed harsher now. The laughter cues were gone. The usual rhythm, joke, applause, band sting, had dissolved entirely. Colbert shifted gears again, perhaps sensing the magnitude of what was unfolding. Let's talk about your fans, he said. They see you as a symbol of independence. Does that pressure you? Jenna's expression softened slightly. It humbles me. But does it scare you? He pressed. It motivates me. To challenge authority, he asked. To challenge expectations, she corrected. There it was again. Precision. Colbert nodded slowly. And what expectation are you challenging tonight? The question hung dangerously in the air. Jenna met his gaze directly. That I'm here to be agreeable. Silence. Absolute silence. For a split second, even Colbert seemed unsure what to say next. The audience wasn't laughing. They weren't whispering. They were locked in. Colbert cleared his throat. Well, he said carefully, I never expect my guests to be agreeable. Just entertaining. Jenna's eyes didn't leave his. Sometimes truth is more entertaining. The applause exploded. It was no longer just support. It felt like a shift in allegiance. Colbert glanced toward the crowd, then back at her. The dynamic had changed unmistakably. He wasn't steering the conversation anymore. He was reacting to it. And somewhere in that shift, the power balance of late-night television tilted, just slightly. He adjusted his tie again, a gesture viewers would later replay in slow motion. You know, he said, voice steadier now, this might be the most intense interview we've had all season. Jenna allowed a faint smile. Maybe that says something. The audience erupted once more. But beneath the applause was something deeper. The sense that this wasn't just an interview anymore. It was a cultural moment unfolding live. And it wasn't over. Because just as the tension seemed to plateau, Colbert leaned forward again and asked a question that would push the conversation into territory no one backstage had prepared for. The applause was still echoing when the shift happened. Not loud, not dramatic, just a slight lean forward from Stephen Colbert, the kind of movement that meant he was done circling. He was going in. The smile returned to his face, but it was different now. Less playful, more surgical. You know, he began slowly, tapping his cue card against the desk. There's been a lot of discussion online about actors reshaping projects to fit their personal beliefs. The audience quieted instantly. And some critics, he continued, glancing briefly toward the camera, argue that entertainment is becoming overly self-serious. A subtle challenge. Across from him, Jenna Ortega didn't flinch. Are you asking me something? She said calmly. Colbert nodded. I am. Do you worry that in trying to control the narrative, actors risk losing the audience? A sharp question, carefully phrased. Jenna folded one leg over the other, posture relaxed but eyes alert. I think audiences are smarter than they're given credit for, she replied. They know when something is real. And when it's not? Colbert pressed. And when it's manufactured, she said. The word hung heavy. A low murmur rippled through the studio. Colbert leaned back. Manufactured by who? The tension thickened. Jenna's gaze shifted briefly toward the audience before returning to him. By systems that decide what's safe to say. The crowd reacted immediately, a mix of applause and stunned silence. Colbert's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Safe, he repeated. You think this show plays it safe? There it was. Direct. Jenna didn't blink. I think every platform has boundaries. Colbert smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Including yours? Yes, she said instantly. But I'm honest about them. The audience clapped again, louder this time. Colbert drummed his fingers lightly on the desk. So you're suggesting late-night hosts aren't? I'm suggesting, she replied evenly, that satire can challenge power, but it can also protect it. The room froze. Even the band members exchanged glances. Colbert stared at her for a long second. That's a bold statement. Truth usually is, Jenna said. The applause this time was explosive. Colbert let it ride for a moment, then leaned forward again, lowering his voice slightly. You've become something of a symbol, he said. Young, outspoken, unapologetic. But symbols are complicated. They get projected onto. Misunderstood. Attacked. Jenna nodded faintly. I'm aware. So what happens, he asked carefully, when the backlash comes? A beat. It already has, she answered. The audience quieted. Colbert tilted his head. From who? People who confuse confidence with arrogance, she said. People who think boundaries are disrespect. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath now. Colbert exhaled slowly. Do you think I've been disrespectful tonight? The question landed like a dropped glass. Jenna paused. The silence stretched. Every camera in the studio zoomed in just slightly. I think, she began carefully, you've been testing me. A few gasps broke through the darkness. Colbert raised his eyebrows. Testing you? Yes, she said, framing questions in ways that suggest I'm difficult. Entitled. Too serious. He opened his mouth slightly, then closed it. The audience was completely still. And are you? He asked finally. Jenna's expression didn't change. I'm serious about my work, she said. If that's uncomfortable, that's not my responsibility. The applause that followed was deafening. Colbert forced a laugh, though it carried tension. Well, I promise I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. I didn't say I was uncomfortable, she replied. Another collective inhale. Colbert blinked. You seem very certain, he said. I am, Jenna answered. There was no hostility, no raised voices, just clarity, and somehow that made it sharper. Colbert shifted in his chair, glancing briefly at the audience as if recalibrating. You know, he said, voice steadier now, late night is meant to be playful. We tease. We poke. It's part of the format. I understand the format, Jenna said. And you're okay with it? She held his gaze. I'm okay with jokes, she said. I'm not okay with narratives. The distinction hit hard. Colbert leaned forward again. What narrative? That I should be grateful instead of assertive, she said. That speaking up is rebellion instead of professionalism. The audience erupted again. Some were on their feet now. Colbert's expression softened slightly, but there was intensity behind it. You realize, he said, that some viewers might think you're reading too much into this. Jenna nodded. Some viewers always do. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, but this time it was on her side. Colbert gave a slow smile. You're very good at this, he said. At what? She asked, turning pressure into momentum. She paused, then allowed the faintest smile. I've had practice. The tension shifted again, not gone, but transformed. Colbert tapped his pen once more, then set it down deliberately. Let me be transparent, he said. Part of my job is to challenge my guests. And part of mine, Jenna replied, is to not shrink when that happens. The room exploded. It wasn't just applause now, it was release. Colbert leaned back, exhaling. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't hostile anymore. It was electric. Finally, Colbert smiled, this time more genuine. Well, he said, you definitely didn't shrink. Jenna's expression softened slightly. I don't plan to. The audience stood, clapping louder than they had all night. But the cameras were still rolling. And as the applause swelled, Colbert leaned toward her one last time and asked quietly, almost off mic but still audible, do you think tonight changes anything? Jenna looked out at the crowd, then back at him. I think, she said slowly, people are tired of pretending tension doesn't exist. The applause returned like thunder. And somewhere beyond the studio walls, social media was already exploding. Clips were being uploaded. Headlines were being drafted. Comment sections were igniting with debate. But the interview wasn't over yet. Because what would happen after the cameras stopped, and how the world would react, was about to turn an intense conversation into... The applause didn't fade the way it usually did. It swelled. It rolled. It lingered long enough that even Stephen Colbert seemed unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the moment breathe. Across from him, Jenna Ortega sat composed, hands folded, expression steady. But her eyes carried the weight of what had just happened. This wasn't playful banter. This wasn't viral-friendly teasing. This was a shift. Colbert finally turned toward the camera, smile measured. Well, he said lightly, that's why we do live television. The audience laughed, but it was layered now. They had witnessed something unscripted. Something unfiltered. The band began to play softly, signaling the segment's end. But even as the music rose, the camera caught one final glance between them. Not hostile. Not friendly. A recognition. The screen faded to commercial. And then, the internet exploded. Within minutes, clips of the exchange were flooding timelines. The moment Jenna said, I'm not okay with narratives, was cut into 10-second edits. The line, I don't plan to shrink, was posted with dramatic captions. Reaction videos began appearing before the show had even finished airing on the West Coast. Hashtags started trending. Some praised her. Finally, someone said it. Others criticized her. Too intense for late night. Debates spiraled in every direction. Entertainment blogs rushed out headlines. Think pieces appeared dissecting generational dynamics in Hollywood. Commentators analyzed Colbert's body language frame by frame. The slight tie adjustment. The pause before he said touché. The moment he asked if she thought he'd been disrespectful. On morning radio shows, hosts replayed the clip. On streaming panels, critics debated whether the tension was intentional or accidental. Was it confrontation? Was it empowerment? Was it a publicity masterstroke? By sunrise, the moment had transformed from an interview into a cultural flashpoint. Backstage, sources would later say the atmosphere had been unusually quiet after the segment. Crew members whispered. Producers checked social feeds in real time. Some worried it had gone too far. But neither Colbert nor Jenna stormed off. In fact, according to staff, they spoke briefly off camera. Calmly, respectfully. Because here's the truth that rarely trends. Tension doesn't always equal hostility. Sometimes it equals honesty. Still, the narrative outside the studio took on a life of its own. Supporters of Jenna framed it as a generational awakening. A young actress refusing to be boxed in by traditional late-night dynamics. Clips from her breakout role in Wednesday resurfaced. Fans drawing parallels between her fiercely independent character and the composure she displayed in that chair. Others defended Colbert, arguing that challenging questions are part of the job. That late night isn't meant to be a safe space. It's meant to provoke thought. Opinion pieces cited past interviews where guests sparred with hosts. Some called it the most electric moment on the show in years. By midday, mainstream news outlets had picked it up. Entertainment panels split-screened the clip. Headlines used words like awkward, icy, fiery, and unfiltered. And yet, if you watched the full interview, not just the snippets, something else was visible. Two professionals. Two generations. Two philosophies colliding. Not with shouting, but with precision. That's what made it powerful. No insults. No raised voices. Just clarity. Later that evening, Colbert addressed it briefly during his monologue. He smiled and said, last night's interview sparked a lot of conversation. And that's a good thing. Conversation is healthy. The audience applauded. He didn't apologize. He didn't double down. He let it stand. Meanwhile, Jenna posted nothing. No tweet. No statement. No clarification. Silence, but this time on her terms. And that silence amplified the moment even more. Fan edits slowed down her calm expressions, overlaying dramatic music. Supporters praised her composure under pressure. Critics questioned whether the exchange had been rehearsed. But one thing was undeniable. People were watching. Days later, the clip continued to circulate. University media classes dissected it as an example of shifting celebrity dynamics. Comment sections remained active battlegrounds of opinion. And somewhere in that noise, a larger question echoed. Who controls the narrative? Was it a shutdown? Was it a misunderstanding? Or was it simply two strong voices refusing to soften for comfort? In the end, perhaps that was the real story. Late-night television has long thrived on laughter and levity. But that night, it held space for tension, for generational friction, for a young actress choosing not to shrink, and a seasoned host choosing not to silence her. The moment didn't end careers. It didn't spark feuds. It sparked conversation. And sometimes that's more powerful. Now the question turns to you. Do you think Jenna crossed a line, or held one? Was Colbert challenging, or defensive? Did this moment represent progress, or just primetime drama? Drop your opinion in the comments below. We want to hear your take. And if you love deep dives into explosive celebrity moments, cultural clashes, and the stories behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe to Studio Narrator right now. Like this video if you felt the tension. Share it with someone who needs to see it. Because in a world where narratives are constantly being shaped for us, the real power belongs to those who question them. And trust us, this won't be the last time late night turns electric.